I asked FPL experts what their transfer plans were for Game Week 17, and here's what they had to say. So I'm going to start off with a couple of players that were discussed to be sold, essentially. We've got Antoine Semenyo here, who in his last 5 appearances has not got a single attacking return. However, his underlying numbers have suggested that he probably should have. We can see there 1.22 expected goals, 0.53 expected assists, and he hit the post in Game Week 16. So whilst he hasn't necessarily put up the actual attacking returns yet, that doesn't necessarily suggest that he's not been like prolific or dangerous. He's also, over that time, courtesy of these Opta stats from Fantasy Football Hub, has had 17 shots in the box. So that suggests to me that he's still pretty dangerous. Now, he might have been disappointing in terms of points scored, and he obviously got substituted off early with what people consider to be a hamstring injury first up, but just confirmed by Iraola to be some tightness. So he should be good to go for Game Week 17. But yeah, no attacking returns in five appearances. It's obviously a suggestion that he's gone off the ball and is not a great option. But I'd probably just urge on the side of caution with actually getting rid of him, because I think the level of shots he's had in the box and the underlying numbers he's put up, he's still relatively dangerous, I would say. The next player was Morgan Rogers, who, again, well, he's got 1 attacking return in his last 6 appearances. And again, the underlying numbers suggest that maybe he could have had more, a goal and an assist by the looks of it. And one thing I would say, in Game Week 16, when he played Nottingham Forest, he could well have had an assist for a penalty. He got dragged down by, I think it was Elliot Anderson, wasn't it, in the box. And I do think that was a penalty. And we look back on both Semenyo and Rogers being pulled down in the box and it not being a penalty on the referee's decision. And then Semenyo hitting the post, it's fine margins as to whether they could have returned in 16. And I think if they both had those returns go their way, we wouldn't necessarily be considering them as options to be sold. So yes, I can definitely understand why people are considering getting rid of them. But I would also just, I said, urge on the side of caution, because these players are, known entities in the game this season who can score goals and get assists. And had things gone slightly differently in Game Week 16, they might well have done. So obviously, I said urge on the side of caution in terms of getting rid of them. But if you're sold on getting rid of them, there are 3 players that are really being touted as the best replacements at a similar price point, right? First up, he's the talk of the town at the moment in FPL, Ahmad. 6 appearances and 7 attacking returns to his name in the last 6 game weeks. 12 shots in the box, so he's proven to be pretty dangerous. But you can see there, he's got 1.44 XG, so suggests maybe he could have done a little bit more from an attacking perspective in terms of scoring goals, I guess, rather than just an attacking perspective. But the XA is only 0.47, and he's got 6 assists. So that, to me, usually players always tend to overperform their expected assist stats. That seems to be a common theme, certainly in the Premier League. But 6 assists compared to 0.47 is a massive overperformance. So I would just suggest, yes, the numbers look great, but particularly on the assist side, it's a bit of an overperformance in terms of what he has actually put up. And you can see there, he's only created 3 big, well, still decent, 3 big chances. He's created 3 big chances and still gotten 6 assists out of it. Obviously, it's shots that have been parried or blocked or whatever that have led to assists. That might well be the case there. And only 8 key passes, and it's 6 assists. So all I'm trying to say here is he's put up 6 assists, but he's not necessarily been massively creative. Although, you got to think he's going to be starting regularly for Man United with what's going on with Rashford and Garnacho at the moment. At least I would think. And the heroics he performed in the Manchester derby. He's still to play Tottenham in the Carabao Cup. So we'll find out what happens after that game. This video is going to go live just before that. So if he gets injured or whatever, then I look like a bit of a fool talking about him. But I think he'll get through that game unscathed and be fine. Yeah, I think he is a good option, but I just, look at those assists and the overperformance of those stats and, maybe consider he's not quite as dangerous as the numbers might suggest. Another player that's being touted is Alex Iwobi of Fulham. He, again, has put up some really decent numbers in his last 6 appearances, 3 goals, 2 assists. And I'd actually say his fixtures coming up are pretty good as well. Southampton, Chelsea away is a relatively tough one, to be fair. But again, I wouldn't say Chelsea are the most resolute defence in the league. And it's Bournemouth, Ipswich, West Ham. So those next 5 fixtures for Fulham, I think, are actually pretty good. But it is a similar story, I guess, with Ahmad in terms of the returns. The XG and XAs put up is not massive. but he's got 5 attacking returns from that. So again, it's a bit of an overperformance, I would say, in terms of the underlying numbers. But when you do watch him play, he does look like one of, well, if not Fulham's best player. So he is an option if you were looking to get rid of either Rodgers or Semenyo. Certainly when you look at actual assists and goals over the last 6 appearances. And then finally, Enzo Fernandez, another player who I would actually suggest, based on the numbers he's put up, the XG, XA, etc., he has put up the most, I don't know, convincing level of returns that he can stay consistent with it, I guess. But even then, there's doubts with him, right? And one of the biggest doubts I would actually say with Enzo Fernandez is the way Maresca seems to like a weekend starting 11 and then a midweek starting 11. And Game Week 17 is a weekend fixture, so we should be fine there. But Game Week 18 is going to be a bit midweek, obviously, with Boxing Day fixtures, etc. So could Enzo Maresca change his 11 for those Boxing Day fixtures? Just a question. I don't know the answer to that. I think only Enzo Maresca does, but he has proven to do that in the past. So yeah, I would potentially suggest that there's a potential that could happen, right? But the numbers he's put up, I think, are pretty convincing. 7 attacking returns from 6 appearances, 7 shots in the box. The XG/XA, I think, are the best of the 3 players we've spoken about. Obviously, Ahmad, Iwobi, and Enzo here. And yeah, it certainly looks like he's playing a slightly more advanced position, but that kind of changes game on game depending on who he's partnering in midfield, etc. But, you know, he played a little bit deeper, I believe, in Game Week 16, still came away with an attacking return. So I guess it suggests he can be prolific and dangerous from wherever. I would say if I were to pick one of the 3, I would probably go for Enzo Fernandez, but there really isn't a whole lot to split them, I've got to say. But if I was looking to sell Rodgers and Semenyo, based on obviously what the experts are saying, or it looks like people are doing, those are your 3 best replacements. And if it was my pick, I'd probably suggest Enzo, but then I'd be a little bit worried about a midweek change in the 11. Now, Chris Wood, you've got to respect his level of consistency this season, and I sold him, actually, a few game weeks ago. I sold him for Isak, and I don't regret that decision because Isak, I think, overall is a better asset than Chris Wood. But I've got João Pedro sat in my team at the moment who is just rotting it away, to be honest. Whereas Chris Wood, I think, is the outstanding cheap striker in the game. The form he's in this season is just brilliant. And I think, I don't know, I'm kind of in the mindset now. Previously, I was a little bit concerned about his goals being way higher than his XG. You can see there, he's nearly doubling his XG with the goals that he's actually scored. But I'm warming up to the fact that he is just such a clinical finisher. And the way that Forest are playing is perfectly suited to the way that he wants to play. And the very few chances he's getting for them are the kind of chances that he wants that he can finish. You know, headers from crosses, etc. I think they're playing optimally to how Chris Wood wants to play. And he's pretty much nailed on to start every game, I would suggest. He's not necessarily a 90-minute absolute, minutes guaranteed man, but I think he's going to start every game. And when he's on the pitch, he takes penalties. And despite not being a 90-minute man, at 6.6 million for that level of returns, I think is just great. And it's not just this season where he's got this great goal-scoring record either. It extends all the way back to last season. So you've not just got a 16 appearance sample size for Chris Wood this season. You can look back at last season and the numbers he was putting up when Nuno joined Forest last season is very similar to like the trend of goals being above XG and goals per game, etc. It's very similar to this season. So we've got a rather large sample size now to suggest that Chris Wood is a good option. And that for me makes him probably, well, not probably, definitely the best cheap striker in the game right now, and my experts agree. Finally, with the sending off of 8 Nori, there is a decision to make on a sub 5 million defender to bring into your team. And ultimately, I think that decision is going to be between Anthony Robinson and Lewis Hall. And I don't think I can give you a definitive answer on who I prefer between the two, because there's not a whole lot to choose between it in the fixtures, I don't think, certainly over the next 3. I guess Robinson has the outstanding fixture in 17. I wouldn't really split Ipswich and Southampton too much in terms of points potential for these 2 players, but I would suggest that Robinson has the edge given that it's home for him. And then both players' fixtures in Game Week 18 are tough. Chelsea away for Robinson, and then Villa away for Lewis Hall. So those are 2 relatively tough fixtures for both of those teams. Although one thing I would say, I guess, is that I would back Newcastle to be able to pull out a result and keep a clean sheet against pretty much anyone at St James's Park. They have the ability to do that. So whilst Aston Villa might be a really decent attacking side, I do think, as we've seen against Man City and Liverpool, Newcastle, they're a tough team to play at home, and I think Villa could have problems in that game. So I would probably actually give Lewis Hall the edge in terms of that Game Week 18 fixture. And then 19, well, Robinson's got Bournemouth at home and Lewis Hall has Man United away. So for me, the Bournemouth fixture at home is clear. So we've got here a view of, their head-to-head stats. And there is so little to separate these two players. The only real difference maker, I would say, is the expected goals conceded for both of these teams. So over the last 6 games, Lewis Hall, while he's been on the pitch, Newcastle have conceded 5.08 expected goals conceded, whereas Robinson has conceded 8.9. Although I would say Robinson's fixtures just gone by have probably been a lot tougher than Hall's have. So it probably actually balances out. What I'm trying to say is there is ultimately very little to split these players. I would probably give the edge to Robinson just because I think he is more of a minutes guarantee, and the kind of busy festive period is in full swing there, right? And I just see, well, I don't see it actually happening. I think both of these players probably play all the games. But if there was one that I would suggest is more likely to be benched for whatever reason, because there's cover in that position from other players, like Dan Burn could play there, Lloyd Kelly could potentially play there, Trippier's obviously in the squad, he could play there at left back for Newcastle. So there are other options that could play there, whereas Robinson, I mean, he's probably, like I said, Iwobi's their probably best attacking player, but overall I'd actually say Robinson is, in my opinion, Fulham's best player. It just so happens that he plays at left back. I think he's genuinely one of the best left backs in the league. And that would make me think that he is pretty much guaranteed to start every game. So for minute security, he is a little bit more expensive, but you get what you pay for, I think, in that minute security. There's nothing really to split them, I'd say, in terms of defensive quality and attacking stats. So I put it down to minutes and probably, in my opinion, give the edge to Robinson. Just to round things off, I don't necessarily think many people are watching this video won't have Isak now, but it certainly looks like he is the just absolute outstanding striker in the game right now, and probably in the league. With Haaland's form taking an absolute dip, Man City not looking very good at all. Obviously, that Manchester derby was a pretty dismal affair for both teams, to be honest, but particularly Man City. I think experts also think that Isak is the best striker in the game right now, and his form over the last 6 games proves it. 7 attacking returns. The guy is he's sensational. I think as a player, he's absolutely wonderful, and the numbers that he's putting up are great. And the next 5 fixtures for Isak, I think, are, on the face of it, some of them look tough, but I think he's got a chance of scoring in genuinely all of them. Ipswich away, great chance of scoring. Aston Villa at St James's Park. Villa are definitely not the best defence by any stretch of the imagination, so I think he could score there. And then Man United and Tottenham away, 2 teams again that aren't the strongest defensively. And then Wolves at home after that. I think those next 5 fixtures for Isak could be really good. And yeah, in my opinion, some of the experts are saying it too. I think right now he's the best striker in the game. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. I realised there was going to be a little bit of break of content from me between my last upload, which would have been on Tuesday, and the weekend when I'll do my deadline stream. So I thought this would be a nice little filler video to keep you ticking along with FPL content. So if you appreciated it, like I said, please leave me a like rating. Struggle to get my words out then. Let me know in the comments, if there are any other players not on this list you're potentially considering bringing into your team. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. Should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you, if you're there, on the deadline stream Saturday morning.